Hi, I'm Dr. Sue Barnes, CEO of Tap Into Safety. Recently on our blog, we looked at some research that conducted an experiment to see whether people could recognise, recall and report hazards. Now, this is critically important to business because you need your employees to recognise, recall, report and rectify workplace hazards. But the research shows that people really don't do this well. So in this video, I'm going to take a look at the blog post and the research that underpin the post, and I invite you to take a look at it on our webpage, and there you can download the full paper using the links provided. The first thing we did in the blog was to look at the 3 types of hazards. The 3 types of hazards are obvious, emerging and hidden. An obvious hazard is one that you can see. For example, an oil spill or a chemical spill on the floor on the workshop. An emerging hazard is one that will happen over time. So things like cracks in handrails or corroding infrastructure on stairwells. And finally, a hidden hazard is one that you can't see. For example, noisy environments with long-term hearing damage or exposure to carbon monoxide gases. Now, you need your employees to be able to recognise all 3 types of hazards because only then can they report and rectify them. The paper presents a discussion on safety management systems in the context of hazard reporting. Now, generally, your SMS relies on accurate and reliable data coming in from the shop floor. So it's very important that your employees have good hazard perception skills. But we know that they don't actually do that very well. One strategy that organisations use to increase hazard awareness skills is to put up safety posters. There is the assumption that raising awareness of hazards through things like safety posters will increase the detection and reporting of hazards. However, there is zero evidence that safety posters increase hazard perception skills. Because although a safety poster might be noticed on the first day or 2, they very quickly fade into the background in a busy work environment and simply become wallpaper. We need to be looking at other more effective ways to raise our employees' hazard awareness skills so that they can actively recognise, recall, report and rectify workplace hazards. In the blog, we now look at the 4 steps in the hazard reporting process. The first step is witnessing a hazardous scenario. You need to see it. The second step is identifying that the scenario is hazardous. You need to process that the hazard is harmful. The third step is you need to determine the level of harm to yourself or your fellow employee. And if it's hazardous enough and if it's harmful enough, then you're going to report that hazard, you're going to put it in your SMS, you're going to report the problem, and then you're going to take the correct steps to rectify the problem. Witnessing and recognising a hazard is affected by the environment and the likelihood that it will harm or injure an employee. But the problem is busy and noisy environments often make it hard to detect hazards. Perception of the risk of the hazard is affected by the employee's personal bias. Have they seen the hazard before? Have they seen someone injured by the hazard before, or were they injured from it before themselves? Now, the paper gives a really good example of novice drivers who first get in behind the wheel and everything they see in front of them is a hazard and they're all rated equally. But when you're now an experienced driver, what you tend to do is rate hazards from high to low, and you really only pay attention to those that create a high hazard in your own view. Hazards need to be processed and assessed by employees to determine whether they're likely to injure or harm them. And this is problematic when they do the same job day in, day out with repetitive tasks because complacency sets in and they can't see the wood from the trees. Once a hazard has been recognised, it needs to be assessed as to the level of harm and injury to an employee. And if that's deemed significant enough, then you report and record it. And then you can go about rectifying the problem. Now let's take a look at the experiment results. The experiment was conducted at the Centre for Innovative Human Systems, Trinity College Dublin in Ireland. 3 simulator hazards were developed and placed around their risk lab. Now, the experiment was designed to assess the capacity to recall, recognise and report hazards of the participants, and they did this by using an exit survey. Now, of the hundreds of people who walked through the area over that weekend, 153 completed a survey at the exit to measure their ability to recognise, recall and record information about the three hazards. The three hazards were a leaking chemical cupboard, a faulty switch box and a leaking pipe. The chemical cupboard hazard had the highest rates of recognition, with 77 people who remembered the hazard and recorded it on the exit survey. And it was the only hazard that was reported to staff at the centre, but only 3 people actually notified the centre staff that there was a problem. 56 people believed the faulty switch box was a hazard and they put it on the exit survey, but no one reported it to centre staff. And no one recognised the leaking pipe hazard at all. It wasn't recorded on the exit survey and no one reported it to centre staff. Now, this study had some significant limitations. It was conducted on the public and not in an active workplace, and these people hadn't received formal hazard perception training. However, it does open up some significant insights for the workplace, because a severe lack of recalling, seeing and recording and reporting of hazards really does show how workplace hazards can be completely ignored and missed. The next part of the blog looks at whether we should have formal hazard perception training, and we offer some good methods of training hazard perception. Proactive hazard perception learning activities have been shown to embed knowledge and significantly reduce workplace incidents and injuries. Hazard perception training should be a top priority for any company, regardless of the size or the industry, and this training should be made available to educate all staff on how to work safely in their daily environment, how to spot a potential hazard, and how to maintain a health and safety culture that will spark awareness and interest in safety among employees. Now, by following up hazard perception training with a robust reporting requirement, you have a recipe that will help to address workplace safety risks. How you deliver training is vitally important, and this is where interactive methods come into play. Your employees need an active role in the process. They need ownership, and the content needs to be relevant. When you do this, when you use interactive methods, it embeds the knowledge and transfers into practice. This will help your employees to recognise, recall, report and rectify workplace hazards. Now, safety training delivery is changing, and it's changing fast because our new employees are part of a tech-savvy generation. They expect to receive interactive, relevant hazard perception training, and this is influenced by their increased use of smartphones, gaming platforms, social media and real-time interactions with global peers on a daily basis. Training is no longer consumed by this generation as it has been in the past via passive learning deliveries. So there's now more emphasis than ever to create engaging learning experiences. Tap Into Safety provides interactive and engaging hazard perception training that can be used online and on smart devices. Why not pop over to our webpage where you can try a free demo, or you can contact me for more information. Let's do what we can together to keep workers physically and mentally safe.